Hello, this is Andy with a new video, or sort of a new video, because a couple of years ago I did a sort of like short series for a Facebook group that I'm on, relating to post-rock and some of my favourite bands and discoveries on that, and some stories about it, which some of which are quite interesting, I think. So I thought I'd sort of reprise it for this YouTube channel and update it, because sort of things have moved on since I last did that. But basically, I ran through 5 major bands that I really like, have records for, and to me, sort of bring the breadth of post-rock. Now, I mean, post-rock, what the hell is it? The jury is out. It's arguably one of those catch-all sort of categories, if you like, because I think when I go through these bands, I'm going to talk about 5 of them, one per episode, and then a little 6th one I'll just pick up the very beginnings of post-rock and how it developed into where these bands have subsequently taken it, and it's none of them would probably consider themselves to be post-rock, and there lies one of the challenges of it, that there's no great clarity on what post-rock is. I have my own view of it, I actually, before, when I did this first lot, I had a look on Wikipedia to see what they said, or whoever wrote that Wikipedia one. And to be quite frank, the definition on there is, in my humble opinion, a load of bollocks. It really doesn't match what I do. One of the ones which I'm quite fond of, I read an article years ago, I can't remember even where, but its headline was Crescendo Central, and that sort of doesn't exactly sum it up, but there's a certain theme there that quite a lot of post-rock or classic post-rock tracks are typically instrumental, though not exclusively so, and tend to have sort of quieter moments and very loud, intense moments, and quite often they sort of build up to a peak in the middle, and then towards the end is a little bit slower. Of course, they're not all like that, but quite often that sort of crescendo central comes to mind. Anyway, this to an extent is my journey through the discovery of post-rock. So I'm picking these 5 bands, and I'm essentially picking the album from each of them, which I first discovered them on. So, I'll major on one album, but cover a bit of the discography, just for the broader bit. And where there's a bit of a story around it, I'll cover that. I think one of the other things which I will use, I tend to use the word bonkers a lot, and forgive me if I do, when describing post-rock, because a lot of it is pretty bonkers, not least the descriptions or the titles of their tracks are pretty universally bonkers, with a few exceptions, and certainly that starts off for me, because it didn't start with a kiss, it started with a pair of brackets. And I am, of course, talking about the band Sigur Ros from Iceland. And this is the album which I first got into. And it's untitled, it's known as Brackets. It came out in 2002, and this is the original CD I bought of it. I have since, which I'll come to in a second, got the a vinyl version of it. So I bought this album. I had no idea what post-rock was, never heard of it, to be honest, at that point. It had somehow, during the 90s, passed me by, and at the beginning of the 2000s, in 2002, I read this review about this Icelandic band I've never heard of at the time, and the way that the singer, one Johnsy, had made up a sort of language, and I've forgotten what it's called now. Hopelandic, I think it is. Anyway, it's a sort of like, it sounds to me what I imagine Icelandic to be, but it's completely made up. He sings so beautifully, that even though there are lyrics, nobody knows what they mean. But it's almost like an additional instrument. So I think of them actually as quite instrumental, because the singing really adds almost an instrumental tone to it. And the other thing as well, which is quite different, not far from unique, because it's been done for, by many great guitarists over many years, but he tends to use the cello bow on his guitar. He's the lead guitarist as well. I think more often than not, from what I can see. So let me come back to this album, because this is the one which I came to first. As I said, it's untitled, other than it's sort of known as the Brackets album because of it's basically brackets. And it's got 8 tracks on it, and equally all of the 8 tracks are also untitled. So it's quite helpful in that sense. Now, to be fair, the band have given them names over the years, though officially they're untitled. So and there's some good examples of that bonkerishness which I described earlier. So, for example, the 8 untitled albums tracks. The first one is called Vaka, Vaka, which apparently was the name of one of the band's daughters. And the second track is called Firster, which means the first song. So the second song is actually the first song, or the first song is the second, whatever. My favourite is track 6, which is called Ebo. And that's simply because the bassist, George or Jorga, how you pronounce it, uses an ebo on his bass, and to great effect. And so there's a couple of bows going on there because Johnson's using his cello bow on the guitar, and that to me is a real classic, classic of the post-rock genre. It's pretty much a staple of their live shows. And there is a live album, which I've mislaid. I can't find it, and it's really bloody annoying me. It came out in 2011, and it's called Innie. So I've got a sort of CD and DVD of it, if only I could find it. So that's a great live album. It's sort of like ish halfway through their career, but actually in terms of their discography, it's sort of like 3/4 of the way through. They have produced 2 or 3 studio albums since then, but most of their early stuff, certainly they're more post-rock in their early stages than maybe their last album, which I'll come to. The last track on untitled Brackets is called Poblatio, and that's sort of fairly well-known one. It actually means the pop song, and it's quite a lengthy one. Another great live recording. And just to show, always the sheer opaqueness of these post-rock bands. When you look at their album, it's a double. That's one of the sides. Not only is there no track listing on the album, but there's no indication on the label as to what side you're listening to. I mean, yes, you could. They've all got blobs on, so you could memorise the blob, or you could peer at the run out, but that's too difficult. So whatever order they come out, I play. I know the songs now, so they just get played out of order. So just going back, let me put that down there. Going back one, so the Brackets album was their 3rd studio album, and that came out in 2002. And then, I can't remember what year this was, late 90s, 98, I think, ish, is this album, which I can never bloody pronounce. It's called Agata Brasia, or something like that. I call it the Embryo because it's got a sort of strange angel type embryo on the cover. And this This album is it's another one which I got on CD first, and then subsequently the vinyl. All these vinyls are reissues, by the way. The Bracket one was a 2020 reissue, which I'd been looking out for, and they reissued it in 2020, so I bought it. They actually issued another one last year at the 20th anniversary edition, and whilst the packaging was a bit different, didn't seem enough to warrant paying lots of money for essentially an identical one. I'm not that much of a completist. But this album, coming back to the embryo, as I call it, is considered to be a real classic of the post-rock genre. So if you look at lists, online, everyone has a list of the top number of post-rock albums. This one invariably appears in the sort of top 5 to 10. And I'll come back to lists every now and then going through these. Absolutely superb. Probably technically better than the Bracket, but I've got a soft spot for that. And then their next one, because there's a good run there. The second, third, and fourth album to me are my favourites of them because they're really the classic post-rock phase. And the fourth album, the third one I don't have their first one. It's fairly average, I think. It's called Tack, and again, this was another 2020 reissue, and it's a beautiful. Absolutely beautifully packaged, and it's on almost like a box set. It's so thick. It actually comes on a double, 12-inch vinyl, so like a regular double album. But it's also got a 10-inch in there as well, but only on one-sided 10-inch and etching on the other. But a beautiful album, and I've got the CD as well of this, and that again is. Lovely packaging. I think I don't have this one on vinyl, but they're sort of mid-range. This one was probably the album which sort of catapulted them to much greater awareness. So they're starting to be slightly less post-rocky at this stage. They always hold that sort of style. And I call it med sod. I can't pronounce the whole. It's like a sentence in Icelandic or Hopelandic, I don't know. But anyway, it means with a buzz in our ears, we play endlessly. And there's some great tracks on there, some singles which actually made the charts as well. And if I move forward to their last one, so there's a couple. I've got another couple of on CD, but this is a beautiful album. This was the last one they produced. It's maybe 2000. It's a while ago, 2017, maybe 18, and it's called Valtteri. And this is their least sort of post-rocky. 25 years on, they continue to evolve. It's a beautiful one, and I believe that I've read that they've been working on another studio album, which hopefully is due out this year, if rumours are to be said. And I had the opportunity to see them this year, so I went to the concert they did at Brixton Academy. I don't live in London. It was a trip and an overnight, but it was an opportunity to see them, and it was great. So that was my take on Sigur Ros, the first band that I came across this genre of post-rock. Yes, I know the purists of Sigur Ros fans often, like the band, don't consider it to be post-rock, but I do, and I recognise the similarities and the style. Either way, it's fabulous music. They're a great band, and I love them. So that's the first of these. The second one, we are moving from Iceland, staying in Europe, and we go to Scotland, and another post-rock band that are pretty well known. I think most rock fans would recognise Mogwai, even if they're not necessarily into their music. And that was the second band which I came across. So there was a bit of a sort of some space in between these, and it was now in the mid '00s. So again, some years after their earlier, their first albums, that I came across Mogwai, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching.